Hello and welcome to this calm little corner of the internet where I talk with other not a messy bitches about how organization helps them thrive.
Mhm.
Today I am joined by my very, very good friend and neighbor, Melanie Lockert. The internet first met her in 2013 when she launched her blog, Dear Debt. This is a blog that chronicled her breakup with student loan debt. And since the success of that blog, she has gone on to co-found Lolo Retreat, and she has created the Mental Health and Wealth podcast. And she continues to help people nurture a healthy relationship with self and money as a money mindset coach. Thanks so much for being here.
Yay, thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here and chat with you.
I wanted to start off this episode by repeating to you what you often say to your listeners, and that's that you are so amazing and so brave for being here, for speaking so openly about two very taboo subjects, right? Mental health and money. A lot of people don't want to touch that with a 6-foot pole. And so it's just so incredible to have you in my circle of friends, because I feel that a lot of the conversations that we have really helped me overcome a lot of blocks that I have, and it's just been such a gift to be able to talk to somebody about topics that are hard to take anywhere else. Yeah, let's talk about mental health and wealth. What was it like for you when you first realized that the two were quite inextricably tied?
So I first realized that mental health and money were so inextricably linked back in 2012 after I had graduated from NYU. And I was so excited to start my new life in New York, get a great job, and that didn't quite happen. And I ended up with $68,000 after I graduated, after already paying my debt for 5 years. And I ended up moving to Portland, Oregon. All I could find was $10 to $12 an hour temp jobs. This is not exactly the life that I had imagined I would have after getting a master's degree from NYU. And so that whole year, I just felt the weight of this debt kind of sitting on my chest. I felt so anxious, owing so much money while making so little. And, when you owe someone, it's like you're constantly paying for your past when you're trying to, live in the present and pay for your future. And so I felt this huge ball and chain just kind of tethering me to the past. My present was making very little. I was on food stamps and situational depression, which was triggered by my student loan debt. And it wasn't until I started my blog, Dear Debt, in 2013 that I realized I had to make a change. Pretty much all of 2012, I was just crying and upset and obsessing and worrying. And then I was like, there's really no option for me except to get out of debt. Like, this is the main cause of my depression and anxiety. And if I want to feel better, I have to pay off my debt. And so I started my blog, deardebt.com, in January 2013. And I said, I'm going to keep myself accountable in the debt payoff process. And just taking that one step changed my life forever, because I realized I had spent so much time worrying about the debt. And I was like, if I can channel that energy into something positive and creative, then maybe I can actually try to get out of this debt. And so it was that mindset shift that really helped me move forward, but it took so much internal work to do so.
Yeah, I'm picking up on this word that you just used, mindset. Can we talk a little bit more about what is money mindset for those people who are not familiar with this term? What is it, and what are the different types of mindsets people have around money?
So a money mindset is kind of like a lens in the way that we see money. So our money mindset is formed by our family, by our friends, by our culture, by the things that we heard and saw as children. And so we grow up with these messages that we don't even realize until we're much older. And so, I had these money mindset beliefs like everybody has student loans, or student loans are the good debt, or, I don't need to worry about debt, like everybody has it. And so, or like, rich people are greedy. Obviously, I wasn't just born with these thoughts. They accumulated somehow in my journey growing up. And I realized if I really wanted to pay off debt, then I had to get rid of these mindset beliefs of like, student loans are the good debt. Clearly they're not good if they're giving me an anxiety attack almost every day. And I don't care if everybody has student loan debt. I don't want to be like everybody. So, dealing with mindset is so tough because there are these money scripts that are kind of built into us from childhood in our culture. And it takes typically a very big event for us to even interrogate where they came from and why. And so a typical money script a lot of people suffer from is a scarcity mindset, feeling like there's never enough, feeling like they have to get the cheapest price possible. Constantly this like low grade anxiety. I think there's also kind of a script around like money sabotage. Like I know someone who couldn't even handle seeing money in their account, so they would just constantly spend it because that's what they were used to. So they were like, let me just go with what's comfortable and constantly spend it, right? And another common belief is people think that people who are wealthy or rich are greedy or are evil. And when you step back, it's like money is a neutral currency that we assign value to. Like itself is not anything, but we have all these feelings and emotions related to it. And it's because of our money mindset. It's because of the way we grew up. It's because of the way our culture shows us how money relates in the world. And so, money mindset really can be the invisible driver behind how you behave, how you think about money, how you act around money. And you can see this in so many different ways. You see this from someone who is a penny pincher who like never wants to spend any money because they're so anxious. Or you'll see it with someone who just flippantly spends all the time because they're like living in the now. They're not thinking of the future. Actually having money kind of stresses them out in some kind of way. And they just want to release it. And so a lot of people have unhealthy relationships with money. And part of that is because we don't talk about it. And like I said, it wasn't until I realized that I had to get out of debt to feel better that I had to even interrogate, where did this idea that all, student loan debt is good debt come from? Where do I get this idea that, rich people are evil? Like, where are these ideas coming from? And how can I get rid of them so that I can take action to actually pay off my debt?
Yeah, just hearing you describe the different sorts of mindsets, I mean, it's really bringing up a lot of feelings for me because you and I have talked about this. My parents grew up in poverty, and when they immigrated to the U.S., they had to learn to really survive on very little for a while. And even when they moved to a much more comfortable financial place, my mom in particular, right, she was always anticipating crisis. And as a child, it's also very hard to see that because you're not really that aware of what's going on, but I felt like I was just constantly living with her nervous energy. And now, especially like in her older age, as I'm learning more about that mind-body connection, I'm seeing the toll that it's taking on her body as well. She just, because so much energy is given over to worrying about money and worrying about finding herself, lacking. She's stressing her body out and is also dealing with a lot of chronic health conditions. Do you find that you see this in your clients? Do you see that the scarcity mindset or even abundance mindset, manifests in different ways for your clients?
Yeah, I think financial anxiety is very common, number one. And number two, financial trauma, especially as it relates to childhood, is very real. If we see our parents getting evicted or applying for bankruptcy, or if we're constantly having to move, wondering where we're going to sleep at night, of course that's going to have an effect on your mental health and your anxiety and your feelings of safety and security. And so, as a child, you're kind of unwillingly just bearing witness to this incredible difficulty. And, I see a lot of people hang on to that and constantly worry that, is that going to happen to me? Is that going to happen to me? And it's incredibly difficult to let that go because you've already seen it happen and you're just wondering, when is the shoe going to drop and that happens to me, right? Mm-hmm. And so while the worry is valid in a way, I think it's really important to practice mindfulness and to get back to the present moment and take an inventory of what you already have. And a lot of us will find, I do have a roof over my head. I do have food that I can eat. I do have hot water. And for right now, that is enough. And also, I would encourage people to have a reframe. So obviously you dealt with this incredibly traumatic experience, but you got through it. You're still here. So instead of constantly worrying like, oh my gosh, is that going to happen again? Be like, I already survived that. If I could survive it once, I could survive it again. And then also I try to encourage people to realize, like, I think this is probably true for everybody. Think of everything you've ever worried about in your entire life. How much of it has it come true? Like most of our worries never come true. And typically the stuff that we have to worry about, we never even saw coming. We never even thought of. So, when I think of everything I've ever worried about in my entire life, I'm like, 98% of it didn't happen. Maybe 2% did. And it wasn't even in the way that I thought it would. And the real big stuff, the kind of life-changing, traumatic, life-altering events, you're like, wow, didn't see that coming. And so when you think of it that way, you kind of can reframe your mindset to realize that a lot of these things that consume so much energy don't even happen. And so when we get back into the present, we can kind of let go of these holds on us and just say, let's see what happens. And let's take strength in knowing that I survived all of this already and I can survive it again. I mean, anyone that survived 2020 and 2021, which I heard someone say Q5 2020, it's like, we're already survivors right now. Like, yeah. I mean, the fact that we're still here, even functioning at all, like, I'm still so amazed that any of us are literally doing anything.
I know, it's such a testament to
no one saw all of this coming.
What is that saying that you
this has just shown us, like, we've dealt with so many crises.
What is that saying that you have that, your life is this constant balance of saving for the future, but also like needing to spend all your money if the world ends tomorrow? Like, you say it so much more elegantly, but how does that go?
Yeah, I mean, I always say that life is a balance, because you could die tomorrow or you could live until you're 100. and you have to prepare financially for both. And that is extremely difficult because obviously if you live until you're 100, that requires intense planning, saving, and investing. If you're going to die tomorrow, of course you want to just like spend all of your money and be like, I'm not going to be here anymore. Let me just enjoy it. But you have to find that balance because obviously no one knows when we're going to go. I mean, maybe it could be tomorrow, hopefully not, but it could also be when we're 100. And so there's this constant balancing act of, you know, I want to live in the moment and spend my money and enjoy it while I'm alive, but then also I'm going to need it in the future because I don't want to be an old person eating cat food.
Sometimes though, the marketing for cat food, it makes it look pretty tasty. It's just so like juicy, succulent.
I have cats, I know.
You're just like, Thelonious, I'm gonna pick off your plate. Hope you don't mind. Okay, so on that note, like how does organization play a role in managing personal finances, in, you know, striking that balance between dying tomorrow and living till you're 100?
Yeah, I think organization plays a huge role in managing your money and managing what you want in the short term and in the long term. And so, you know, I always recommend people first really get to know your numbers, because before I got into personal finance, I mean, I kind of had an idea of what my numbers were, but like, not really, right? I just kind of knew that I had enough to pay with my debit card and had enough to pay my credit card off. But you have to know, how much debt do I actually have? How much do I have in my checking? How much do I have in my saving? How much do I have in investments? What are my monthly expenses? What's my monthly income? Obviously, you want your income to exceed your expenses. If you don't, then you're likely in debt or contributing to more debt. A number that I think is important is your net worth. So your net worth is all of your assets. So any cash, investments, anything that is of worth. Some people decide to put in their home value or not. And then minus your liabilities. So minus all of your debts. So your net worth is a more accurate number of kind of where you're at financially, because it looks at the big picture of all of your assets and all of your liabilities. So you can kind of see, okay, here's where I'm really at financially. My net worth is X. And obviously you want that number to continue to go up. Mm-hmm. If you're investing, which, you know, everyone should, your numbers are going to go up and down based on the market. But obviously you kind of want to contribute to that overall growth month by month. And that's where tracking can really help. And obviously you need to be organized if you want to track. So I personally have a money date every Sunday where I check my personal checking and savings, my business checking and savings. I transfer money from PayPal to my business. I might pay myself, you know, business to personal, pay myself a salary. I'll pay off my credit card and I'll check my net worth. I'll do all of that about once a quarter or sometimes twice a year. I'll check my credit score, my credit report. So credit score is a 3-digit number that shows your creditworthiness, and your credit report you can get at annualcreditreport.com for free. And that's kind of a comprehensive credit history. But if there's anything wrong in the credit report, that can affect your credit score. So it's good to kind of know that everything in that document is accurate, because there are inaccuracies sometimes. And it would be horrible if you had an error in your credit report, it affected your credit score, you ended up getting a higher interest rate on a loan and ended up paying more because of something that's inaccurate, right? So all of this organization and tracking is super important to maintain your finances, to make sure you're kind of on the right path, paying down debt, building wealth, and then also just staying on top of bills. You know, I think a lot of people think that building credit is this mysterious, difficult thing, but 35% of your credit score is paying your bills on time. So I always say the number one thing you can do is pay your bills on time. The second best thing for your credit is keeping low balances. So 30% of your credit score is based on amounts owed, which means credit utilization. So if you have $1,000 credit limit on your credit card, but you're charging to the max every month, even if you pay it off to the credit card issuer, that is a red flag that you're using so much of the credit. I know it's kind of a messed up system, but if you can keep your balances 30% or below of your credit limit, so if you have $1,000 credit limit, if you keep $300 or less on that card, then you're in good standing with your credit utilization. And those two steps alone, paying your credit card on time and all of your other bills, and keeping your balances low compared to how much is available to you, those two steps are the best ways to build credit.
Yeah, I think that's really, I mean, it was so eye-opening when I learned that this is how your credit score is computed. I actually had no idea. For me, I had always been really good about paying not just the minimum payment on my credit cards, but the full balance. And and I thought that alone should just keep me in that excellent credit range. But I didn't realize that all along, because I only had one credit card, I was never charging to the max, but I was going over that 30%, and it just didn't make sense to me. I was like, why is my credit score dropping when I feel like I'm being very organized and responsible about it? So yeah, knowledge is power.
Yes.
So yeah, I think there's something that I think about a lot, and it's that knowledge is certainly power, but knowing is not necessarily half the battle. I feel like accountability is an even larger piece of it whenever we're trying to reach some kind of goal, whether it's to be debt free or to get six-pack abs. Can you talk a little bit more about the role accountability played in your personal journey to become debt free and how that's informed your coaching practices?
Yeah, totally. So as I mentioned, my debt payoff journey really transformed when I started my blog, Dear Debt, in January 2013. And I said, I'm going to post debt repayment updates every single month. I'm going to share all of my side hustle income and the crazy adventures that I had trying to make extra money. And, at first I was just kind of writing to my mom. And then I kind of connected with other personal finance bloggers. And then people started reading my stuff, and people started cheering me on and saying, like, I'm paying off debt too, and I feel anxious about my debt too. And really having these kind of anonymous strangers on the internet cheering me on really helped. And even though I started with a very small following, like everyone has to start from 0 to 1 and 1 to 2 and 2 to 10 and on, just having that external accountability was so helpful for me. And like I said, channeling that negative energy that was literally killing me into something more fun, writing these breakup letters to debt, writing these posts about here's how much I paid off this month, here's what I did to side hustle. It just gave me that extra accountability to show up and actually do it. Yeah. Having accountability is so important because here's the thing. Our brains love the path of least resistance, which means we don't like to do a lot of things. We like to stay safe and comfortable because it helps us feel alive and secure. So having an accountability partner really helps us show up in a way that we might not show up for ourselves. I think this is especially true if you are an obliger. If you know about Gretchen Rubin, which I highly recommend everyone check out Gretchen Rubin, she has these kind of different types of people, and that can inform your behavior. So I'm an obliger, which means I'm not so great at internal motivation, but when someone else is on the line, I'm like, I don't want to disappoint them. I don't want them to not like me. I don't want to blow them off, right? So I'm very good at meeting deadlines. I'm a very good freelancer in that way. And, when I signed up for a boxing gym, that was the first time that I really got serious about exercise because I was paying money to somebody else to actually do it. Whereas before, I wasn't really into it. And so, with my coaching practice, I really try to get people to show up for themselves and also their finances in a way that they might not be able or willing to do themselves. And I think a lot of people feel like it's a failure on their own part if they can't just do it by themselves. Like, for example, one of the things that has saved me this pandemic is this program called FocusMate. So FocusMate is a virtual co-working program where you get assigned a partner for 50 minutes and you work together online and you tell each other what you're working on at the beginning and the end. And just having that accountability of like, this is what I'm going to work on this session. And you work for 50 minutes and here's what I completed. Like, it has been such a game changer for me. Like, having that external accountability, I've gotten so much more done with FocusMate than I ever did trying on my own. And I think it's important for people to not internalize like, I'm a failure because I can't do this alone, or, I can't get it together to be motivated, because you don't need motivation, you need discipline. And it's really hard to kind of muster that internal discipline sometimes when you're dealing with everything else in life. So having a coach can really help you show up in a new way, see things in a different way, and get to that place faster than you ever would yourself.
That's great. Is there anything else that you would recommend to somebody who is trying to break up with that is adverse affecting their mental health, be it debt or clutter or even a person?
Yeah, I think, when it comes to breaking up with debt, up with clutter, breaking up with a person, there's a lot of emotions and baggage that come along with that. And it can stir up a lot of emotions because you're making this big life change and people get scared and they want to go back to their comfort zone. And I really encourage people to not catastrophize the situation. And what I mean by that is, like, we have all these negative imaginings of what's going to happen if I break up with this person, if I get rid of this thing, if I, don't get rid of debt. Think of all the possibilities of what could happen. Like, when you get rid of something that's no longer serving your mental health, you are literally creating space for something that will benefit you. Right. And I think sometimes we get scared of that empty space because we're like, well, what am I going to do with myself? I'm scared to sit alone with my own thoughts. But that's where the growth happens. And discomfort is a key thing when it comes to change. I mean, nobody likes being in discomfort. Unfortunately, like, there's no growth without discomfort. I mean, think about when you're an awkward teenager and you have those growing pains and you're kind of awkward in your clothes and nothing really fits right. I mean, it's the same kind of thing, but in a different way when we're trying to shed our old identities and trying to embrace something new that is completely different. But I think it's important to look at the future, look at the possibilities, and also just realize this is no longer serving me. So if it's no longer serving me, why am I holding on to it? And then really interrogate those questions. Why am I holding on to it? Because usually there's a deeper reason. And if you can get to that reason, that's when you could really start to heal and move forward.
Yeah, amazing. I love that analogy that you drew to empty space, right? I think so many people want to fill this empty space. They want it to be full. And it's really hard for them to see that empty space is opportunity. It's not void. It's not lack. It's an opening for abundance, for good things to come. Yeah. So how can people keep in contact with you and work with you?
Yes. People can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Melanie Lockert, MELANIE I'm also at mentalhealthandwealth.com, deardebt.com, melanielockhart.com, and lolaretreat.com. And you can check out my podcast, The Mental Health and Wealth Show, where we talk a lot about stuff like this, about everything that relates to money and mental health.
That's so awesome. Thank you for your time today and for just sharing so openly your personal experiences as well as your philosophy to living lighter and to being healthy and wealthy
Yes.
in ways, in less materialistic ways.
Yes. Thanks so much for having me.